Our X-Files. Welcome to our X-Files Vault. Regular people talking about unexplained phenomena. UFOs. Ghosts. Cryptids. Hidden archaeology. Weird science. Our stories. Our takes. Our X-Files Vault.
Hello and welcome to the Scary Creeptastic Podcast, Episode 3. We are your hosts. I am Scott Campbell alongside Cam. And welcome to another episode. Cam, what do you got for us today?
Hey Scott, well, thank you. Today I'm going to do a unique creature called the devil monkey. This cryptozoid creature is primarily seen or reported throughout the New World of North America. However, there are other examples, and I don't want to say direct or loose comparisons, but around the world as well. However, it's primarily seen in North America. So typically, the devil monkey, it's a creature, I'm sure you heard of it. It's easily confused with the werewolf or a regular baboon, chupacabra, or a Sasquatch. However, it's very different from a lot of those creatures, as well as even the Jersey Devil itself. People tend to get them confused. The devil monkey, typically, they're anywhere from 3 to 6 feet tall. Most of the time, though, they don't really get above that size. They're very hairy with different ranges of colors. Typically, their track marks are typically almost like, when people see their track marks, it's almost like a hybrid between a chimpanzee, because they have elongated feet like a chimpanzee, as well as sort of like a dog or a werewolf. And they typically have, razor sharp, not talons like birds do, but claws. They're very strong, like most other primates. And they're known to have a crazy odor, heat and screaming sound, as well as crazy glowing eyes. Typically, these creatures are also a little bit more aggressive than most other cryptozoids, because when you hear about a Sasquatch, you never really hear about people getting attacked or livestock or loose pets or small pets being taken. However, with the devil monkey, that seems to be one of the common things in terms of livestock, people getting attacked. These animals are very vicious. A lot of people refer to it as a gorilla on steroids. These things have been sightings going back as far as 1934, which is roughly the first sighting believed to be recorded in terms of North America. It was actually in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee, where local residents, farmers, people just heard screeching and howling sounds throughout the night for a couple of weeks. And it eventually led to an investigation where even one of the policemen's dogs supposedly got killed by the devil monkey. And then the search party grew even more. It was also reported in a lot of national papers at the time about the possible devil monkey sighting. After a couple of weeks, nobody was able to find anything, and a lot of the locals think the thing just went away or went into hiding. It was pretty quiet on the devil monkey front for a while after that, in terms of until 1955. The Boyd family, which is the family that lives in Saltville, Virginia, they actually had 2 sightings of a devil monkey. One sighting was when they were driving in their car, they saw what appeared to be a beast that was approaching, roughly 5 foot or shorter. It was hairy. The daughter actually even gave a better description in terms of the fur and its claws and its hands and its eyes. And it had a crazy leaping ability. She claims that it could leap. And that's another thing a lot of cryptozoologists say, is that the devil monkey can leap up to 20 feet from a sprawling distance. However, in that same town, Saltville, after the Boyd family saw the devil monkey, one of the Boyd family members also saw another sighting of a devil monkey. And a couple of days after that family member saw another sighting of a devil monkey, 2 nurses in the same town were driving from work, and they got attacked by a creature that went to their convertible and just ripped off the top of the car, and then clawed with a 3-claw mark on the side of the car. That was the last time that the devil monkey was seen in that area. And then in 1973, Warren Coleman did an investigation where he investigated 3 reports of the devil monkey in Albany, Kentucky. And I'm sure you heard of Warren Coleman. He's, I don't want to say the godfather of cryptozoology, but man's done a lot for this field and work. he studied them extensively and says the reason why they're called the devil monkey is because, like most other primates, where they can be aggressive, the devil monkey gets its name because they're more of a vicious and they're trying to hurt you. Where when we see a Sasquatch, most times, even though Sasquatches are believed to be bigger than us, where if it's the Yeti, abominable snowman, or the skunk ape, they tend to like avoid us in terms of hiding. You know, with a devil monkey, sort of, it's almost like they're protecting the territory, or they're trying to scare you, or they're trying to, you know, come at you. In 1996, there was also another report in Louisiana by Barbara Millis. She was driving on Highway 12 in Louisiana, where a bunch of people were pulled over, and they're looking at what was a carcass, and they're all trying to guess what it was. Some thought it was a coyote or a Pomeranian puffed up. However, in the photo that she took, you can see elongated feet, which led to the speculation of maybe it is sort of some type of hybrid like creature or a devil monkey type of thing. That's actually still going on to debate, because she actually has one of the few photos. And there's a couple other photos out there in the line circling of what's believed to be a carcass of a devil monkey. A little bit more local to us, in 2001 in Danville, New Hampshire, which is a small town. It's probably about, I don't know, not that it matters, about 20 minutes from me, kind of close to you as well. For the longest time, there's reports of people hearing screeching, scrawling at night. That went on for a couple of weeks, and people were just thought it didn't sound like a native animal in the area. From there, people were a little bit on edge, talking about their livestock, trying to see if anything was going on, until one morning in September, the fire chief of that town said that he saw a primate creature running. It was bigger than a mid-sized dog, but it was running on all fours at one point, to the point of where it stand up on two legs. It was kind of leap a few times. And from there, after the fire chief saw it, or at least in terms of that sighting, there was a search party that went on for 2 weeks. And then once that search party happened, they unfortunately didn't find anything. In terms of ancient history pre-devil monkey, there's actually there's a witchcraft, it's not a witchcraft, but a witch doctor in Africa, who one of his theories is about devil monkeys is typically when people are possessed, they'll try to remove a demon or entity or spirit out of that person, and they'll use like a pet or a monkey in order to transfer that entity into that vessel of body. And then once that demon or entity is removed from the individual into the monkey, they typically take the monkey and keep it in a more secure area. A lot of times his theory was that the devil monkey started when they started to escape, and then from there they sort of started mating with New World species. That's another theory about the devil monkeys, because they are primarily seen in the US, mostly the Appalachian Trail. They've been seen in Arizona as well as California, even in the Midwest. There's a big sighting in Ohio, actually, as well in the 70s, which led to a lot of people thinking that the devil monkey might have been a government monkey that was experimented on, that just went crazy and just genetic. These things are also believed to be feral too. They even have more of a mystical aspect to them as well, where Sasquatches are big, they're pretty good at being stealth too. Devil monkeys are also known to like have some type of smoke around them as well, in terms of the mystic, and just that 1 second they're there and the next they're not, and how quickly and how fast they move. So like with that, like I said, a lot of people think that one is a mystical creature. Another thing that some people believe it might be from aliens related or UFOs. People tend to think that the devil monkey is Bigfoot's cousin or Chupacabra's cousin. I wouldn't want to quite say that, mainly just because like Bigfoot, you don't really hear about violent things. Chupacabra, yeah, he's a goat sucker. It could, that hybrid type of canine, which the devil monkey, it seems to be falling in more lines with, because some people think it's the dog man. Some people confuse the dog man with the Guji, which is also a little bit bigger than the devil monkey and more, not demon, but some people even confuse it with the Jersey Devil, or thought the Jersey Devil was devil monkey. But however, the devil monkey doesn't have wings, typically like the Jersey Devil does. So, and what's ironic too is, like I said, the first report in the US happened in the 1930s, and then you went 20 years without any more sightings. A couple in the 50s, a couple in the 70s, and then from the 90s here on out, we're having more and more sightings, which a lot of people tend to attribute to the with developization and cutting down woods and trees and plants, migrating, that these animals just run out of places to hide. Laura Coleman's theory thought was that the devil monkey's really just trying to protect their land and try to scare us and try to sort of force us out. I know I kind of threw a lot there at you, but I don't know. What's your opinion, Scott? What do you think of the devil monkey craze or whatever I said?
Well, a lot of what you said sounds very interesting. It sounds like the devil monkey could be. It sounds like it might be like a big cat or something. A lot of the cryptoids make a lot of sense. In regards to, it could be a hybrid animal. There's a lot of hybrid animals that have been found over the years that have been known to exist, like the lion and the tiger, the liger, and all that. So it's possible that it could be something that it's multi-species animal that's out there that is just very aggressive, and it's very possible. And I believe that it exists, and maybe it still does, and we just are not running into it. But who knows? Yeah, it's very possible.
Well, I personally wouldn't want to see one, just because as much as I want to find the Sasquatch or another cryptozoid, the devil monkey seems like one of those few cryptozoids that is just violent, and the sightings don't really seem to end on a good thing, because most of the sightings are either pets being killed, like in 1934 when the supposed police dog got killed by it, or those two nurses of the Boyd family in Virginia were getting a convertible ripped off. Luckily, they were unharmed, but nonetheless, though, it is pretty fascinating stuff, and I just find it ironic, just the fact that it does seem to be, there are other types of devil monkeys or ish around the world, but this typical breed, size, characteristics seems to only be found really just in the U.S. Granted, there are some sightings out in Arizona, but like I said, this mostly seems to be along the Appalachian, which, I mean, that woods is pretty well hiked, but it is a vast, beautiful woods too. So there's a lot of places where it could hide out in there. So my theory is as good as mine. So I think that's most likely and pretty possible. So what do you have for us today?
Well, I'm doing a UFO case. It's a UFO case that is actually not as well talked about as most of the other ones, like Roswell, the Betty and Barney Hill case, or the Travis Walton case.
Yeah, Betty and Barney Hill, that was the first one, right?
I'm sorry. Well,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but wasn't Betty and Barney, that was the first ever UFO sighting, right? I think
that was an abduction, but yes, that was 19
first reported, right?
I believe, or something. Yes, yeah, that was in New Hampshire, actually.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that took place in. Yeah, that was 1961 or 50s or something. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. Yep, that was. And this one is very, very, very well documented. And I'm surprised a lot more people don't know about it, but there's a lot of stuff on it. And it's very interesting because the amount of people that saw, and I'll get into the details, it's actually on that program that I asked you to watch called on Discovery Plus, called The Phenomenon. And it's let me get into details. In September 1994, at the Ariel School in Zimbabwe, several UFOs were sighted over the Ariel School, which was and the Ariel School was like a private school for elementary school kids. Now it had probably on the upwards of several hundred kids. Now this Ariel School was the school that was for very high profile students, like students that it cost a lot of money to go to. So these weren't just a regular public school. This was school kids for diplomats and people that had a lot of money. So you had to have a lot of money in order to send your kids there. So anyhow, the point I'm getting at is the school had a lot of diversity, so it wasn't just like one group of people or any one specific culture. It was a whole diverse group of students that saw these, I'm gonna say 4 or 5 UFOs that September morning. So what ended up happening was, when it was around 10 o'clock in the morning, there was around 60 or 70 students that saw 4 or 5 UFOs land out in the playground from where they were playing out at recess. And I'm going to say maybe a dozen or so actually saw, they call it little people, get out of the UFOs and stand next to them. Now, these are students that are probably between the ages of 8 and 12. So, they know exactly what it is. It's not like they're kindergartners. It's not like they're, really, really young preschoolers. These are kids who know what
They know what you're seeing, yeah.
they're seeing, yeah. Some of them, as years go on, they thought that it might have been like a specific tribe from Zimbabwe. Some of it might have thought that it was something else that they were seeing, but the majority of them knew that it wasn't something that was from this earth. So they ended up drawing pictures of what they saw for their teachers. Now, they were very affected by this, these students. When they went back in from recess, all the teachers knew. The teachers were at like a meeting or something, so none of the teachers were outside and saw this. The teachers knew that they were affected by this because all the students were not really crying, but they were, did you see what we saw? Guess what we saw? And some of them were really, like, all day they were heavily affected by this, and they were drawing pictures and telling the teachers what they saw, and it was, a matter of fact, I have a picture right here, if you can see it, of, I don't know if can you see it?
Oh yes, it's a little horizontal, but yeah, there you go. Yep, that's good. Okay,
That's what one of the students drew, and that's what he saw. He said that day it was a UFO with a person, he called it, with big eyes. Now, this gained so much notoriety in 1994 that it drew the attention of Harvard psychologist John Mack. John Mack then flew out to Zimbabwe because he was a UFO enthusiast. Now, if Harvard trained, I mean, that's pretty, pretty popular. So he flew out there and he interviewed the kids and what they saw, and they all said the same thing: big eyes, big head. They were wearing what they thought they saw was like a black jumpsuit. These kids, they were about the size of a 6th grader, so they were small, and they were walking around their crafts. And he interviewed all like 70 kids, and they all said around the same thing, and they were mind reading, talking to these kids through mind reading. I don't know, telepathy or whatever you want to call it. And these kids were saying things that you wouldn't expect a kid that young to say. For instance, some of these kids were saying, if the world gets too much technology, it's going to end up being bad and it's going to kill everybody. In that were not those words exactly, but similar words to that. And the psychologist was like, well, where did you hear that from? And she said, the little men told me. They showed me a picture in my mind, all the trees falling down and people running out of air. Like, these are kids. Like, I have kids the same age, and they would never come up with something like this. So, and then they snapped out of it, and they were back to normal once these things got back in their shuttles and took off. So it was it was one of those things where their kids, you know, no adults saw it, but all the teachers believed them because they knew that the kids were very razzled by something that they saw, and they wouldn't have just made it up all 60 or whatever it is.
It's true.
And they all had the same story. And even 20 years later, when they're all adults, they all had the same story. And it affected them even 20 years later, because this was 1994, and they all got them back together 20 years later to talk to them. And they said, you know, can you tell me what you saw 20 years earlier? And they all said the same thing: big eyes. It still affects me. I still have nightmares about it. And I couldn't imagine what I saw back then, but it was real, you know. And these people were, and then come to find out, there were other sightings throughout Zimbabwe that whole weekend. Like, there were other sightings in the sky. Some people thought it was Jesus, because they saw lights in the sky. Other people thought it was whatever it was, but they saw lights in the sky. So for 2 days before that, they saw lights in the sky. So when John Mack was done with his interviews with these kids, he went back to Harvard University, and he tried to write a book on this. Well, of course, they said to him, nah, I don't think so. This is silly. This is nonsense. But the dean of the college was like, well, yeah, you wrote a book about this before. This is something that you're passionate about, and all these kids can't be wrong. So we ended up giving him the permission to write his story about what these kids saw. And it's, like I said, there's more documented about this than any other UFO case in history. And even today, like I said, 20 years later, 1994, so it's what, 2021, 17 years.
Did any kids say roughly how long did that encounter last?
Some of them said it was just a few minutes, because they were under a trance for like.
Oh, so it could have been even longer for all we know. Yeah, for all
they don't know, because as soon as they saw the eyes of the what they called the little people, it was kind of like they were in like their own world. It was like they looked into the eyes of these things, and then these things started talking to them through telepathy, and then they snapped out of it, and it was over. So by that point, either recess was over, or the things were gone, or whatever. So I don't know. It was probably a matter of minutes, I guess, from what the interview was saying. But it really doesn't give too much of a detail, because I don't think they know themselves. All they say is a matter of minutes. That's
understandable, because like I'm sure, as you know, I mean, there are like a lot of alien encounters where the person doesn't, they think it's only been a few seconds, when in reality it could have been an hour or two, especially in a situation like that where they're, in terms of telepathy working, where we said one of the kids was referencing to the teacher about how, images of trees falling, I don't want to say chaos, but in terms of that prophecy foreshadowing. So, I'm glad you shared that, because I definitely have a couple of perspectives on that too, because one, a country like that, where I don't want to use in terms of like less developed, but it's going to be easier to see if there's something in the sky, whatever it is, whether it's a bird, plane, or a UFO, it's going to be a lot easier to see in that country than you would see even if you're in Johannesburg, which is a big city, or New York City, hypothetically, with fog smoke. That's part of the reason why I think it's a lot easier to see, or why you do see more UFO sightings, countrysides, or rural areas, because of that. In terms of the kids, obviously, those extraterrestrial beings they probably know a lot more about us than we know about them. in terms of reaching out to kids to get their point across, it's probably a simpler thing because when you're a kid, you're more open to, I don't want to say you're more open to the unknown, but you're open to learning, exploring, and developing. When you're an adult, you're not necessarily closed-minded, but you're sort of already been hardened with life experiences. So if they went to the wrong adult, that adult might freak out worse than the kids. And in terms of these kids having, till this day, still, I don't want to say being haunted, but having dreams or strong memories about it, that totally makes sense too, because I'm sure this experience has changed a lot of their lives. And I mean, I don't know how I will react if I ever was in that situation personally. I mean, it's easy on paper to be like, I want to see an alien or I want to see this or that. But once it actually happens and, I mean, but it is very exciting. I feel like, but for 70 people to all that many people to coordinate the story, that share that same experience years later, they might even remember more stuff about it, even just as time went on, because sometimes that happens, as I'm sure as you know.
Yeah, and then a Harvard trained psychiatrist. I mean, this is not, you're not talking about just some reporter, some schmo off the street. This is a guy.
Oh yeah, you're talking Ivy League, yeah.
Yeah, this is like a guy who he had a lot to lose if, to bring this to Harvard University and then say, I have a story to tell, and then have everybody say, oh, you're nuts. He didn't care because that's how much he believed the story was real.
Yeah, you're right, because a school like Harvard, they pride themselves on their reputation. Harvard, Ivy League, right. Stanford, they pride themselves on education and everything else. And the fact that obviously just getting into Harvard is an accomplishment, just getting accepted, let alone if you completed a year or graduated. So I do think there's a little, definitely some so he obviously saw something in this report as well that led him to say, hey, this really does need more of a thorough look through. Definitely glad he did the follow-up as well, because I mean, you don't really see that with a lot of I don't want to use the word because they weren't abducted, but in terms of people that shared a alien encounter type of thing.
Yeah, he was able to be there 20 years later when they all met as an adult, but he had passed away a few years after that. He was hit by a drunk driver in England when he was crossing the street, and unfortunately he's not alive today. But there's a lot. He wrote a lot of stuff on the UFOs, and he was an avid enthusiast, like I said, and he was an amazing writer when it came to that. But yeah, that's one of those stories that intrigued me a lot since I seen it on that program. There's some other ones too that are really like wow, how can this stuff not be real because of all the, I mean, regardless of Roswell and the normal everyday ones, but you look at some of these other ones and you're like, there's so much documentation of other ones too. Just it amazes me, and I know people personally that have seen stuff in the sky that they can't comprehend what it is. People I know who said they've seen stuff, maybe not so much aliens, but stuff in the sky. So I believe them. It's the same thing with ghosts. I know people who've seen ghosts and they believe that. So, and they've seen it and I believe them. And it's not like they're gonna lie to me because one of them was my mother. So I mean, but
there's so Wyndham, New Hampshire, which is kind of near me. I know I don't mean to keep dropping regional towns, but we like everybody worldwide to watch this program, of course. However, there's this guy, he was the Blue Angel. He's an older guy. I want to say he's probably in the 60s, 70s, definitely old enough to have grandkids, still healthy though. He was, before the pandemic, he was actually speaking at the local library, just in general, because when he was a Blue Angel, he talked about how there are two different experiences that he had over the course. They were 7 years apart, but he saw a UFO with a couple of his not his buddies, but people that he was training with in the sky, and he wrote a report about it, thinking he was going to get a follow-up about it just because he saw an unidentifying object, and he claimed to be pretty close to it didn't know what it was, but him and everybody else on the plane agreed that they saw something, did a report, and this actually happened, I want to say late 80s, early 90s. Yeah, and he said nothing, there was no follow-up. 7 years later, he saw another UFO with did a report, no follow-up as well, but he's ever since then he's definitely been enthusiastic about it. He does a lot of speaking about it. So I find it pretty interesting because there's probably also more UFO sightings or alien encounters that are, I'm not gonna say similar to this one, but just in general, just get unreported because one, you know, especially years ago, we talk about 94 with the Harvard professor putting his reputation on the line then. It's not like educational institutions and the government are open about talking about aliens, cryptozoids, and UFOs now like they were, you know, even 10 years ago. But
yeah, one of the things that I do a lot of research on is presidents and the UFOs, and I've been doing a lot of research on that. And you'd be surprised how many presidents.
Reagan saw one, didn't he?
He saw two. He saw it on two separate occasions. Eisenhower, actually, when he was in World War II, saw something come out of the water, go up in the air, and then take off like a bullet. And this was Dwight D. Eisenhower. I mean, one of the greatest presidents and generals of all time. So who's going to doubt that story? I mean,
yes.
Even not.
I'd be more like.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cameron.
No. I didn't mean.
Cam, I'm sorry.
I'm saying I definitely would believe that just because back then we didn't really have, you know, the type of, you know, stuff flying around like we do now today. So obviously, well, no, sorry, I'll let you. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, that's okay. That's all right. There's accounts from George Washington. There's accounts from Christopher Columbus. There's accounts as far back as the Bible. Some of those pictures that you see painted. You look in the sky on some of those Bible pictures where you see the Virgin Mary holding something, and you look in the sky and there's pictures of UFOs behind her. So I'm just surprised it took so long for them to acknowledge UFOs. And
I remember I was watching this report once on ancient aliens, and they talked about in Egypt where it was like this toy doll. It must have been like, I don't know, 3,000 years old or something. I don't want to say older than the Bible, but nonetheless, it looks like an astronaut suit, though, the doll, the way how it is. And a lot of the translation, they refer to it as the visitor from far away. So, yeah, so that would make you think. I mean, it's pretty.
That show too.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely pretty good. I enjoy it too.
You know that guy with the hair? I'm trying to get my hair like that too.
Yeah, I was thinking about. I got a few more months, but I was thinking about trying to grow a fro myself. But I just got the beard though, so.
Yeah, me too. Well, that's all the time we have for now. For this episode of the Scary Creeptastic podcast. We will see you next week for some more scary tales. But that's all we have for this week. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Hey, have a good week.
You too.